Hello and welcome to the Flag to Flag Motorsport Podcast. My name is Charlie Roscoe, and if you caught our last episode, which was episode number 14, I did actually say that the next time we bring a podcast out that it's going to be something very different, very unique, because Willie, Ryan and myself are actually all going to be together geographically for the first time. We are going to the Australian GT Championship at Phillip Island this weekend. That is still happening. But since there was such a significant round in the MotoGP on the weekend, Willie and I decided that we'd have a bit of a chat about it anyway. So Ryan isn't part of this one. It's just Willie and I. We're only going to be talking about the MotoGP, so it's a bit of a shorter one. Now, Willie was actually with me in person, which isn't the usual thing. Normally we're talking over Skype, but he's actually here with me. So I did remove the pop filter off my microphone so that we could both share the same mic. So fair word of warning, there might be a few pops that punch you in the ear. Early apologies for that. But hopefully you do stick around and listen to this one. Of course, the next one will be that sort of different, more significant one. Hopefully you hang around. Thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. I guess before we touch on any other motorsport, then we really do need to initially just acknowledge, obviously, the tragic passing of Nicky Hayden. It's been all over the news. If you follow racing, it's pretty hard not to have seen that this has happened. The sport really has lost a great guy. He's been around for a long time. 2006 MotoGP champion, and I remember watching him right the way through. I've been watching motorbike racing for a long time, and yeah, he just seemed like a really nice guy. And he's one of those guys that didn't necessarily just have everyone pop up after he passed away, sort of going, "Oh, he was a good guy, a great guy." People have said that about Nicky Hayden since long before any of this, the last week or so. Everyone's always said he's a nice guy. And I truly believe he had a passion for the sport. He just loved racing. He didn't care what bike he was on. If he was in the MotoGP, if he was in the World Superbikes, he was a happy guy. So it is a real shame. We've lost a couple of good ones out of the motorcycle world, and this time it wasn't even in a racing incident. Of course, he was out training on his push bike, so don't want to dwell on it too much, of course, but I just wanted to acknowledge that before we pressed on with anything else. So, moving on to the actual MotoGP round this week. Actually, I'll start with the Moto3. I don't know if you watch the Moto3, Willie, but the crash that occurred at the start of that, so there was a 4-bike pile-up, a couple of them crashed into each other, and I'm not sure what the end result was, whether or not he got a foot peg through the engine case or whatever, but he spilt oil over the whole track, and then as the field came round, it must have been for the second lap, I presume, as the field came around into that corner, I think something like 12, 15 riders went down in one hit. It was a monumental crash. I don't know if either of you guys saw this.
I saw a little bit of it, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. It's not anything I've really ever seen before, I don't think.
No, there was like a really bizarre bit of footage where you could see, it was an onboard footage from one of the riders, and as he came into the corner, I think like he was 7th or 8th or something like that. I put a picture up on Facebook, and every single rider in front of him slid off on the corner. He actually didn't, the one that was on board. But it's not very often you come into a corner 7th or 8th and come out of it in first. So, no, quite interesting. But, that was really just a prequel for everything else that was going to go on for the weekend, because the actual MotoGP race was pretty exciting overall. I think one of the first people to bow out, certainly one of the major contenders, was Marc MARQUEZ, which I thought was a little bit unusual, Mark, but there you go. It seemed to be something that Hondas did. Same corner as Jack Miller's. So Jack Miller had a hell of a crash in practice, was it? Practice 4?
Yeah, he got all untied. He come in on the right-hander.
It was on the switchback, wasn't it? Yeah, so I think as he went around the right-hand corner, I think what they were doing, because of course, if you don't know the Le Mans track, you come around the first right-hander, it's a really, really fast sweeper. And then you're sort of instantly on the brakes for that left-hand chicane. Well, it's a chicane, but of course the first part's a left-hander. And I think what they were doing was getting on the brakes too hard for the left-hand turn while the bike was still cranked over to the right. And it was weird because they dropped the front going the wrong way. So Miller ended up having a hell of a crash and was really lucky boy to get away with that. And Marquez actually dropped it on exactly the same corner. But yeah, initially obviously, the best thing about the championship, the MotoGP championship so far this year, is there's been 3 or 4 genuine contenders. Marquez was one of them, so in a way it was a shame to see Marquez bow out. But it was only a prequel of things to come. So, of course, later on in the race, we eventually had Valentino Rossi bow out, and that was an interesting little moment when that happened.
Yeah, it was a shame. Like, the race was looking like it was going to be pretty promising. Zarco led for quite a bit on the Tech 3 Yamaha, and really showing the other boys how to do it. I think he was on soft combination, so it sort of started to... The tyres started to go away a little bit. Yeah, quite a few crashes.
Yeah, that's right. You're right. Zarco was on the soft.
Yep.
And I think he was one of the only front runners that was. So I think everyone intended, they suspected that Zarco would eventually drop off the pace, which he did a bit, but I can't remember what combination Viñales and Rossi were actually on.
I think it might have been the medium.
Yeah.
But I can't recall. One of the guys who was showing a lot of mongrel, he started from 13th, was Dani PEDROSA.
Yeah, well, the kid finished on the podium in the end, didn't he?
Yeah, one of the corners he was firing through, had a good run on Crutchlow, and didn't even get out of the way. He just smashed into him and kept going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was... it was really good to see Pedrosa actually get up there, and the reality is he's now second in the championship. After that little crash, he's right in this for the first time in a long time. Dani Pedrosa, the perennial bridesmaid, if you will. You know, the guy has had a lot of second places in the championship, a lot of good running, but never actually won a championship. But yeah, obviously, I think Valentino Rossi raced almost the perfect race, because he never dropped off the back of the pack. He kept up. He did what he had to do, but I think he preserved the tyre. And then all of a sudden, with just a couple of laps to go, he just put the hammer down. And he was just exponentially faster than everybody else in the race. Smashed through. He overtook, must have been Zarco first, I presume, as Zarco was dropping off the pace and Viñales was pulling away. Caught up to Viñales, made it look pretty easy. Shot past him up the inside. And it just looked like he had the whole race down pat. It was just a perfect running by the old 38-year-old dog. And but yeah, I think in the end, obviously he crashed. But I think what ruined his, what caused that was actually the mistake he made earlier in the lap. So if you didn't see the race, he was already leading. He had a decent little gap. Viñales was obviously pushing very, very hard. Actually shot through one of the corners, just trying to keep up, basically. Had to cut through. But he ran wide, let Viñales back through, and I think no matter how old you are, no matter how experienced you are, I think sometimes it's easy to get a bit flustered. And I think he knew. He was already celebrating. He was already thinking about his wheel standing across the line. I think he had the race down pat, made a mistake, lost the lead. And Rossi on any other day, in any other situation, would most likely have just either settled for second or regathered, tried his hardest, but he just seemed desperate. He just seemed like he was going, nah, this is my race. You're not winning this now. I'm not coming second after just dominating this whole race. And yeah, he just pushed. I think he just pushed too hard. He went the desperate lunge, and realistically, second place, it would have been disappointing, but at least it would have kept him either in front of the championship or probably actually, how many points do you get for second place? Must be 20, is it? So he would have been 3 points down in the championship, which is still fine, but he dropped it, got none, and I think one of the biggest shames, I mean, obviously, Willie and I have said before in the podcast that we both want Valentino Rossi to get his 10th. You know, there's a lot of reasons for that, which I won't go into now. He's a lot of reasons, but we do want him to get his 10th. Then we'll leave him alone. If he doesn't win anymore after that, who cares? You know, he's done. But that was disappointing. But I think the other main disappointment for me, and I don't want to disrespect Dani Pedrosa too much here, but this is going to when I say it, we want a close championship. We want first, second, third. We want Viñales and Marquez and Rossi to be fighting. Marquez, this is now his second crash in 5 rounds. And all of a sudden, Viñales, if you ignore Pedrosa for a second, then Viñales is 23 points in front of Rossi in third place in the championship. And we've seen in other seasons gone by that by the time one rider gets a full race head start, it's a really, really tough thing. And it seems to take riders all year, well, not all year, but 5 or 6 rounds to catch up in the points. So with Marquez now 2 crashes down, Rossi a full race win pretty well behind, I think it's actually a bit of a shame for the championship now, that it kind of seems to be a one-horse race. Still disrespecting Pedrosa here. I didn't mean to, but, you know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, well, Pedrosa, he's actually pretty fast this year. So it'd be interesting to see how the rest of his season goes. He has a few up and down rounds where he's quick and then he's not. It was kind of good to see Marquez fall off because I didn't want him to run away with the championship. So it was nice if Rossi did win and he started to get a little bit of a gap, then Marquez to fight for the rest of the season to keep it interesting. Where I think if it's an even playing field really for Rossi and Marquez, I think Marquez will have it most of the time. He's got more consistency over a championship season than what Valentino does.
Yeah, and you're right. I think Marquez will still be able to recover. And even if Marquez was one race win behind, you feel like he could come back. But this is going to be a tough task even for Marquez to come back from at this point. The Honda doesn't look to be the best bike out there this year. To be honest, I think the Yamaha is the bike to be on. The only saving grace is that Viñales is still very young. It's his first ever year in the Yamaha. So potentially he's got another crash in him yet. I'd kind of like to see it just to bring the championship back together. But as I said, we are kind of disrespecting Pedrosa here because he is actually the closest person. He's second in the championship now. And yeah, he's the perennial bridesmaid. Maybe this is his year. Maybe everyone else is just going to fall by the wayside. Everyone's focusing on Viñales, Rossi and Marquez. And maybe this is the year that Pedrosa is going to shine and win the championship. It'd be kind of nice, I think, to especially an accumulator. And in fact, the last time I looked back at someone who really just accumulated podiums, points, and got the championship was probably Nicky Hayden in 2006.
Yep, that's right. I don't even know whether did he win a race that season.
I can't even remember. And if he did, it was probably one or two. It wasn't a lot. So it would kind of be ironic in this year that a Repsol Honda like Danny could potentially just plug away, get the podiums. And that's what he did here. He was fourth. He'd been beaten, and he ended up with the podium because he just didn't fall off at the end.
Yeah,
so
I think he really needs to. Like, he hasn't won one yet. We're only having the conversation not that long ago, saying he's probably a bit long in the tooth, not really doing anything, back in the pack, bit of a waste of a factory ride. Could end up like Jack Miller. Would be nice to see on there, being an Australian. Yeah,
absolutely. And obviously we're always going for Jack Miller. If he could win the championship, by all means, give it to him. And he did very well. He came 8th overall. So that was a good result for Jack Miller, especially after the horrific crash he'd had earlier in the weekend. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes. And of course, just to keep my bromance going with Johann ZARCO, the boy again just keeps astounding. He is a serious bit of talent. And I do like ZARCO as well because he didn't sort of come up the way a lot of the Spanish people do through, racing in the little Spanish leagues and that sort of thing from the age of probably 14 or younger. Half of these guys start. I heard an interesting story where ZARCO actually at the age of, I think, 17 or maybe even 19, one of those two, he told his parents that he was going to quit study. He got on his moped, travelled 260 kilometres at night, in the middle of the night. Took him 6 hours to travel this on his little moped, on his scooter, down to a guy's house that he'd met in previous racing days. Said he wanted to race, and those two actually got together. He spent 3 years sleeping on the couch, I think, at this guy's house. So he's really brought himself. He just loves it. He's an unassuming guy. He's not all over social media and stuff. He's just a good hard racer. And I like ZARCO, and I think he's going to go very well. He just keeps proving me right. I love it. It's just every week I talk about how good he is, and he keeps doing good jobs. So